writing my own piece was like getting blood out of a stone. I mean, to say that it had a really clear idea when it started would be to lie through my teeth. A lot of rooms where we were like the youngest people in the room, probably least experienced people in the room. Being around people that had started things themselves gave us a bit of the bug. We haven't started it to sell it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Breaking Uneven podcast. We love to talk shop, uncover the beauty of failures, and play a few games. Today, we have with us the co founder and head of strategy of Sonder Tell, Emily Ames. She was the brand director and managing editor, and then the content director at Suitcase Magazine before she started her journey building Sonder Tell. So, Emily, I hope we've just captured a bit of your journey so far. We're going to get more into it, but is that an appropriate introduction?
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you
Awesome.
for
So, we're just
having
going to
me.
thank you for being here. And we're just going to play a quick little game to understand what you do more.
Perfect. So we're going to play the Twitter pitch challenge. Twitter is known for its 280 character limit on every tweet, which sometimes makes it a little difficult to convey your thoughts. It takes about 20 seconds to speak to 180 characters. So we want to transfer this challenge to you to explain to us on the Tell in 20 seconds. But we won't make it easy. We also want you to use one emoji and one hashtag in your tweet. Any questions?
No.
Okay, perfect. So I will give you a countdown and then you can start. So 3, 2, 1, go.
Sonder Tell is a brand strategy agency that solves problems with stories as a tool. Our emoji is probably a pen, the pen writing emoji, and the hashtag is stories transform.
Under 20 seconds. Amazing.
I went super short and super straightforward. So, yeah.
Yes, that's like, I guess, the idea of the game, just like a crisp description of like what the company is and what it's about. And I think, like, yeah, you encapsulated that perfectly.
Cool. So, Emily, let's dive into your journey. We'll start with Suitcase Magazine, where you were obviously content director. So, tell me this: what was journalism in general, and whether it's content journalism, fashion journalism, whatever it might be, has changed quite a bit over the last few years, especially with the introduction of digital media. So, how was your experience at Suitcase Magazine with respect to the shift in like the journalistic environment?
Yeah, so Suitcase was started by she was kind of a girl at that time, but a woman called Serena Genn out of NYU. And she loved print magazines. She wanted to start a beautiful thing that you could hold in your hands that kind of brought to life these places that people wanted to visit. There was obviously this big shift at the time around travel and it not just being kind of, going one place every year, packaged holidays. And it was a lot more about recommendations from people, getting the kind of insider. And so out of NYU, she started this magazine, and it was all about kind of getting those personal recommendations, feeling like you had a guide in every city, but the kind of cool guide that the person that you wanted to know in the city versus the kind of top 10 listicles and that type of thing. There was obviously a huge shift. The magazine was actually in response, I guess, to the digital kind of revolution around journalism, because it was all about kind of having something that you could hold in your hands. But over time, the online version of the magazine became the kind of daily updated version, keeping up with, I think also travel then took on a life of its own where like everyone was a travel blogger, everyone had their recommendations, all of that type of thing. So the online version was kind of keeping up with that. But then I think the biggest shift for me personally was then, in order to advertising and like the advertising model for print, it was, even with digital, it's really hard to get lots of advertisers to be doing a small platform like Suitcase versus kind of, hundreds and thousands of hits daily on other websites. And what we were really good at was creating content that felt a bit different. It felt quite high standard. It was a really amazing quality, like especially the magazine side of things. And so we started an agency that would help travel brands, some airlines, create content themselves. It was this huge like content boom. Everyone was like, oh, we've got to make content. We've got to make content. But actually people didn't really know what that meant. It was all sounding the same. I mean, a little bit like now with everyone using ChatGPT, but people weren't really thinking about the quality of their content. So we opened this content agency for Suitcase that, basically became a bit of the financial support for the magazine. We had like 2 really big clients straight off the bat, who was Citizen M and Belmont. And through that's how I got my first taste of agency life and kind of switching from telling the stories from your own voice and your own opinion and your own point of view to helping brands shape their point of view, their tone of voice. And actually, I found that a lot easier. I think I was always obsessed with writing stories, always loved writing. But writing my own piece was like getting blood out of a stone. And I think it's why I kind of transitioned more into being brand director at Suitcase and then content director, because I found it easier to kind of draw out from people what their voice was, what inspiration you were using, and then helping them craft that. So that's what we did. Content for travel brands. And then through that, as I said, I got a bit of a taste for agency life, but wanted to build. I think Suitcase had just run its course for me personally, and wanted to create something of my own, and wanted to create, I think because the agency was in aid of the magazine, it wasn't started with as much sort of thought to why does this agency exist? What's our role? What's our vision? All of that type of thing. So I wanted to start something that was built on those foundations versus building on what the magazine already stood for.
So what was that core idea for Sonder and Tell? I mean, if you had the drive to, set in stone certain foundations and the cause and values, there must have been a driving thought behind it. What was that thought?
Yeah, I think it was, to say that it had a really clear idea when it started would be to lie through my teeth, because we knew that we wanted to start an agency that was built on good values in terms of like helping brands kind of be the best version of themselves. So brands have all this power now. Brands can play a positive role in society. How do we help brands kind of develop that identity and develop that voice that is contributing something? I think it was a lot of the time felt like there was so much out there and everyone was jumping on every bandwagon, and everyone was, International Women's Day. It's like everyone had a point of view on that, but it's like, oh, but if you're a, I don't know, C-suite of all men, why are you talking about International Women's Day? Like, you don't need to. So there was like, it was more, I think it was more built on frustrations. One with the kind of, brands getting involved in everything and not knowing what their point of view was and how they were going to talk. I think the second was, as I said, like building an agency which had a bit of a different culture in terms of, I think we were outside of proper agency. Like we didn't come up through Wyden Kennedy or Ogilvy or anything like that. But even the agency that we built at Suitcase, it was like really late nights, very like quite stressful. It was a lot of, it was just, there was a real kind of, not a strange relationship, but it was a difficult relationship with clients because it wasn't that collaborative. It was sort of, we were pitching things to them and then we had to develop all this stuff that we kind of felt like I don't know, it was just all a bit I don't know. Yeah, it was more that we wanted to build a culture in an agency that felt sustainable, I think was the main thing for us. And maybe go against that notion that you have to be burning the midnight oil, or you have to be all of those types of things that kind of are thought about with agencies. And words is what it was built on. Like, we knew that we were good at words, we knew that we were good at stories and storytelling, because our jobs had been journalism, but it had also been, you know, the lines in travel, especially the lines between like journalism and PR are quite blurred, because you're going to these places and you're writing about hotels, and obviously you're writing about them in a true way, but it's not like investigative journalism, it's like travel. So you're trying to create a story around these places, you're finding the special thing about them that people will enjoy, people will be captivated by. And so words and stories, we knew that we were good at that, and we knew how to create stories that would cut through with people. And I think a lot of the agencies are built more on design, and I guess advertising is more storytelling. But yeah, I think so. It was those kind of three things that it was built on, but it wasn't clear at all at the time. We were like, oh, maybe we should do a different kind of PR agency. Maybe we are a content agency. And then through the first few briefs that we got, we started realizing that it was more about this, like, helping brands find their voice and express themselves. We did that for a few years, and now it's evolved. It's not just about voice, it's about the story that you want to tell and the voice that you want to express that in. So yeah, I think one of the things that was really helpful early on was we sat down with actually my brother-in-law's dad, who is a brand consultant, and he did an exercise with us where he was like, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what do you actually want to explore with this, and he did it on one page, and I think it was find your voice and help brands find their voice and express themselves, and that was so helpful.
Interesting. And like, was there any one like particular moment in like your journey, either at Suitcase or in general, where you were like, oh, I think it's about time that I want to start something of my own, or was it a more gradual process?
I think Serena had set a really good example for us, in the sense of like, she started Suitcase out of NYU. So we'd been in a lot of rooms. I think Suitcase's team was really young, so we'd always been in a lot of rooms where we were like the youngest people in the room, probably least experienced people in the room. And actually, like, a lot of the time we had a really good point of view on something, or we felt like something should be different, or we had a different idea to someone. And I think so that kind of set the thought process in our mind that, like, oh, you can start something and you don't have to be the most experienced person, and sometimes that's actually a positive versus a negative. And so I think it was more of a gradual process, because I think it was more like this seed of a thought that kind of grew over time. And I think just being around a lot of people, a lot of her friends were entrepreneurs, being around people that had started things themselves gave us a bit of the bug. And I think also I think it was just travel had worn thin for us, which is like such a privileged, and kind of all of my friends were like, oh my God, shut up. But I think it's like, it just felt like the same challenge again. And I don't mean like traveling had worn thin. I mean like the industry. And we wanted to approach different challenges. We wanted to work with different kinds of brands. Yeah, and I think we wanted to have more of a impact with brands that were maybe changing things for the better. And while there are loads of those in travel, I think we were just ready for the next challenge. But I definitely think it was a gradual process. But I think once, yeah, I think it's when you feel like you're tired of something, when the challenge isn't exciting anymore, and when, you know, staying, going on a trip and staying in a 5-star hotel isn't like, oh my God, then you're like, okay, I know that it's time to like pass the baton and someone else is like, yeah, better suited to this. Um, yeah, I hope that I'm like,
Yeah,
that
no,
sounds really awful, but I hope you get what I mean in terms of, yeah, the challenge.
no, fair enough for sure. And I think one really important thing you said was like the people around you also made like that impact, right? Like there's like influence um on you, like depending on like the people that you're around, and if you see people around you work in a
Totally.
particular way or in like that industry, you also get like motivated and get the confidence to start something of your own. So yeah, I think like that your surroundings also like really, and I think that shows how it was a gradual process. So definitely like made sense. But like being, I think like when you want to start something of your own, it sometimes is difficult to just get started, and like you want to try to be like a perfectionist on like, oh, what the idea is. And given that you said that it took you like a couple of months to like get down to what the brand or what your company is going to focus on, like how did you push yourself to just like get started and like learn what Sonder Tell is going to be through the process, instead of just like finding it from the very beginning?
Yeah. I think what it was is I think it really helped that it was Kate and I together, that we had each other to kind of support one another and take on things that we didn't totally know um, how to solve. I think, yeah, it was essentially like we were going freelance together. And that through getting different briefs, um, through getting different briefs and different challenges and kind of speaking to lots of people, not being afraid to kind of reach out to random people that we hadn't met before, that type of thing, and talking about the agency world. I think that's maybe how we started to learn more about strategy in the industry that we were going into. Um, I think, yeah, it's so hard with starting. I think the idea of starting something is super hard because so much of it is confidence, and so much of that is a very, we've been talking a lot about this at Sonder Tell at the moment. It's like confidence is something that some people have. It's also very privileged sort of position to be in, because if you've like had an amazing education, you have the support of your parents who live nearby, or like you can, you know, both Kate and I weren't paying rent at the time. We had such a safety net that it was kind of like, why not? Which I don't think is the common kind of, yeah, experience. So much of starting something, and even just like where we went to school, like we both were privately educated, which means you're kind of built up to think like, oh, you can do anything, like you're all amazing. And so it's definitely, I think, starting something, and I think that again is in support of, you don't have, if you do really want to start something, I don't think it has to be perfect from the beginning. It could be like freelancing to, you know, freelancing to make sure you've got money coming in, and then figuring out how you start your own thing through that. Or I think it's having a commit, if you have a commitment to starting something, it's, I think the idea of perfection is probably not that realistic at the beginning in any situation. But I think especially if you're like we had we've never had investment for Sonder Tell. We've never really put our own money into it, but we did put in, I can't remember how much it was now, Kate would remember, but we put in a certain certain amount of money at the beginning to get a brand and things like that. So I think it was like $3,000 or something, but we had that money to spend on looking professional and looking like we had it all together when we didn't. And so there are all these things that like contribute to maybe feeling like you've actually started something that sometimes are available to people and sometimes are not. And I think, yeah, it's not really an answer, but it's more just, I think starting something can mean so many different things. And actually, even just if you do want to start your own business, even just like freelancing and then finding a way to turn it into a real business, yeah, is a good way to go.
Yeah, I get what you mean, because I think, amongst my like friends and family and industry colleagues, I have seen those differences. Like I have a friend who started an entire company just on her name, and it's actually like it's restaurants. So she just does it based off her name. It's registered under her own name as a sole proprietorship, and that's her brand now. That's her company. It's functioning really well. And so for her, the importance was to actually have a space. That's what she meant. That's what meant that she had started something. Whereas I have another friend of mine who wanted to get into white labeling products. So he just bought a domain, and to him that meant that his company is up and running. I mean, built in a like simple website. So I
Yeah,
get the
exactly.
difference there.
Yeah, it means so many different things. And I don't know, even like this idea of starting something on your own, or I think like, yeah, starting something could mean starting a career in something else. It doesn't always need to be, I know that's what we're talking about now, is like starting your own business, but I just think I think there's a lot of weight and like praise given to founders and people that have started their own businesses, and it is amazing. And it's more amazing if you maybe haven't come from a privileged background and you've been able to do that. But I think there's also like amazing people that have like gone into careers that maybe they didn't have a background in, or they've worked their way up through. Like a friend of ours that I saw yesterday is like retraining as an accountant at like 33, so that he can start his own business later down the line. But even just those, I think it doesn't have to be starting a business. I think like, yeah, being a career path or anything like that is super impressive.
I like 100% get what you mean, because I started out like in a job, and I was there only for a year before I decided to move back to India and kind of pursue my own thing. And since then, I obviously have seen the benefits and the cons of being an entrepreneur. But to me, like I have like insane respect for people who can, because as an entrepreneur, you're working on your own terms to a certain extent. But to show up like year on year under someone else's terms for like, people who have built 15-year long careers, to me, that's like really respectable.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot of discipline to do that.
Yeah.
So I totally get what you mean.
Totally.
But I just wanted to come back to one thing about the agency world
Yeah.
that we kind of touched upon real quick was, so if you take like large network agencies or agencies that are part of networks like Ogilvy, Wheaton Kennedy, etc., more and more you see brands, and I'm talking about like larger, really big brands working with a combination of kind of one network agency on retainer and then campaigns performed through independents. So what is the difference in the role that Sonder and Tell plays in the industry from a brand's perspective versus an Ogilvy or a Wheaton Kennedy or any of the larger network agencies?
Yeah. I think the role that I think more and more we're kind of slightly playing in a similar space, not in any way at the same scale, but I think when we started, I think the role that we played was very specific. So it was tone of voice, and it was helping brands find their voice and express themselves. And what that meant was we were helping brands. I think the thing that we saw was like a lot of brands had gone through this process with either big agencies or design agencies to find their identity, rebrand, figure out their positioning in the market. And what had happened along the way was like it was always in aid of something else. So the strategy was in aid of design, or the strategy was in order to get to a big advertising campaign at the end of the process. which a lot of the bigger agencies are doing. They're, the exciting work is the campaign that's coming out of it. And I think what we found was that actually the problem with that was that there wasn't much thought given to the voice or the words or now the story that lives across every single touch point of the brand, from kind of, yes, your big advertising campaign, but also your customer service. How are they talking? And I think what we did very early on was we kind of bridged this gap between the kind of big idea and the agency, like, oh, this is your new identity, this is your personality, but we gave the team the real tools to be able to carry that out. So a lot of the tone of voice briefs were like very comprehensive guide, a very comprehensive guide for the team to be able to then execute that voice across different touch points. So I think at the start we were very specifically like words and voice, which I think all of the other agencies do, but I think we specialized in it and we specialize in that. I think what we do now is a slight, now going into brand strategy, I think the difference between us and maybe, I don't know if it's a difference because everyone says that they do what we do. So it's not necessarily a case of like, oh, we do something totally different in terms of the thought process. But what we do now is we help brands create a story that is going to like who their brand is in their customers' lives, what kind of role they play for their customers. So it is positioning, but we do it in a way that we write strategy as a story. We use words and storytelling to bring that strategy to life for teams, with the feeling that you can, a lot of these big agencies are, you get the one line or you get the one pyramid or you get the kind of one statement that is the positioning. But actually as a team and as kind of humans that like stories and respond to stories and remember stories, it's hard to put that one line into action. So our kind of process is bringing strategy to life and creating a story that, yes, cuts through with external people, your customers or whatever, but actually really, and like more and more so, our focus has become on like making sure that your internal team understand that story, feel that strategy, are inspired by your mission, your vision, so that they, the ones that have to carry it out every single day, can go and do that with this strategy. So very long-winded answer, but essentially we all do similar things. It's just the way that we do it. And we don't do a lot of things. Like we don't do the design, we don't do advertising, we don't do I think a lot of those agencies, like the win for them is seeing their work out in the world. And I think for us and a few other agencies that I really admire, but the win for us is like seeing the internal teams be able to execute their own creative campaigns, their own customer service responses, their own amazing content that they've created. The win for us is seeing that the team has like internalized the work that we've done and are able to do it themselves, which I think is a slightly different approach to a lot of the kind of, especially definitely the creative agencies.
So coming to the ecosystem of the agency world, it's quite common for a WPP to acquire an independent agency at a particular point in their lifetime, because they see the different approach, they want to kind of add that as an offering or instill that into their company in some way or the other. So how would you react to something like an acquisition from a large network?
I think at the moment that is not our focus. I think we are still at a point where we want to be answering to ourselves, and we, as I said, like we're not from the agency world, we've never necessarily set out with this agenda to sell to, the WPPs. I don't know enough. I think I don't care enough about them at this moment in time to want to be creating an agency that is ready for them to buy. And I think it's like a big question. Like it's also just one that I don't have an answer to right now. And so I think I think for us, the focus is really nailing our point of difference in the market, really, really arguing for doing strategy before design, really arguing that brand strategy is not a nice to have. It's a real like business investment that's going to help you like retain talent. It's going to help you create loyal customers. I think we have so much more to do that is like staring us right in the face versus like focusing on an acquisition right now. And yeah, I think it's not a never, but it's not our dream if we haven't started it to sell it. I think we're just like not enough in that world either to have started it for that. The team will thank you for asking that question though. I feel like the team's always asking us that and I'm like, I don't know.
No, I mean, I guess it's obviously ever changing, but it's like interesting to know where like your thought process is right now in the stage of the company it is at, and like what I guess the priority lies. But if we go, like we discussed, like the positioning, I guess, of Sonder Tell and like the broader agency world. But if we go more towards like your particular role, so you play the head of strategy at Sonder Tell, and how has that like role transition been in the sense of going from a more creative role at Suitcase to a more like business role, part of your own company? How has that been?
Yeah, I think it's even more present at the moment because my co-founder Kate is on maternity leave. So I think, and she took more of the kind of business role at Sonder Tell. And so for the past, God, feels like forever, but for the past 4 months or so, I have been, running the business in her absence. I guess, so my kind of career trajectory, I think from at the beginning, or Kate and I, at the beginning, we did everything the same. We kind of, we were the same person. She did a bit of the creative. I did a bit of the creative. She was writing sometimes. I was writing sometimes. We were thinking about new business together. We were running the team together, like all of those types of things. And we got an amazing business coach called Mitali Chopra about I feel like maybe it was a year, 2 years ago. And she really helped us define our roles within Sonder Tell and helped us think about kind of, how we could be dividing our time, how we could be prioritizing. And so Kate took more of she hates calling herself the CEO, but she took more of the CEO role, and was also looking at new business and growing the agency, whereas I took more of the role of so she was working on the agency and I was working in the agency in the sense of like I was running the work that was going out of Sonder Tell. So I'm putting together or helping to put together like the team that would be working on it. I'd be like playing the role of strategy director, and then we got a strategy director, so I then played the role of head of strategy within the business, and that was looking more at working on the client work, whereas Kate was working, as I said, on growing the agency and growing the business and focusing on that. For the past 4 months, then I have been doing more of that. And I find it really difficult. I tend to like, it's been really good learning, I would say, for having to switch modes a bit and learn a bit more about what it takes to run a business, feel a bit more of the pressure that Kate was feeling in terms of like getting a new business, making sure like, yeah, profit and loss, all of those types of things. I do slightly like, I feel for our accountant because I do slightly glaze over when he pulls up a spreadsheet, but it's been really good just understanding what it takes to run a business. And I'd say, I think also just having more kind of, I think when you're working on the work with the team, you feel more in the team and you feel like one of them. And I think I had to make a bit of a transition this year to, I'm working on the business and therefore I have to have hard conversations, or I have to make decisions for the good of the business and things like that, that just took a minute for me to wrap my head around. And I think that's been a really difficult, but I think rewarding journey to take this year. Yeah, so I was I got obsessed with Radical Candor, the podcast and the book, and like being more direct with my team, and yeah, all of those types of things. Radical Candor was super useful in helping me have some of the more difficult conversations. I think I slightly like lent on Kate to do that in the past. She's a bit, and not for any reason. So I think that's been a really good, learning this year.
No, for sure. And I think it's like also, I guess, nice for you to see like the different part of like your business through a different lens of
Yeah,
like what's
totally.
going on as well. But you mentioned you have a business coach. So what would you say is the importance of having a coach in starting something?
Oh, she was so amazing, and she's starting her own business, so we had to I don't know why I did this. We had to stop doing coaching with her for a certain amount of time because she has an agreement, and I miss her so much. Uh, the importance of having a business coach, I think it could be in different forms. It could be in like hiring a CEO, it could be in having a business coach, it could be, I don't know, having a non-exec but I think for us it was the accountability of having someone who would help us stay true to what we said we would do. And that was what was most useful with having a business coach. Was it's not therapy, like it is a bit of therapy, but you talk it out, but you are making goals and things that you have to do in order to get to those goals. And yeah, those types of things. I thought that was so useful because, we were going to speak to her in 2 weeks' time, and we had to have done the things that we said we were going to do. We had to make a marketing plan. We had to make a new biz plan. We had to have done our budget, all of those things that kind of kept us accountable. I think that was one of the things. I think the other thing that was super important was she really helped us with coming up with like systems and processes and things that made us more of a business and less of like me and Kate being freelance together. I remember she did, I now can't remember because I don't think in graphs, but she did this, she showed us a graph, and it was kind of, if you're doing these things, then you're just, it's not a business, it's just it's two founders who are, two founders that are basically freelance together. If you want to get to this point where you're actually running a business, you should be able to step out of that business, and that business should be able to run. And these are the steps that you need to do in order to get there. And that was super helpful because it was, I think, a lot of agency founders, it's quite, and it totally depends how you want to run your business, but a lot of agency founders, it's like about, or independent ones, it's about them, and it's about like they want to be doing every project, or the client wants them to be doing every project. And she was like, if a client does not want to work with Sonder and Tell, they only want to work with you, then you haven't created a business. You've created something that resembles a business, but actually is about you. And so I think that, and that's totally like up to you. You know, you can run an amazing business which is about you, but there are people helping you do that. But I think for us, we were like, we wanted to build Sonder and Tell, not Kate and Emily. And so setting up, like, what does a Sonder and Tell process look like? What does Sonder and Tell work look like? How do you onboard people when they come into the team? How do you, all of those types of things were so helpful in thinking about when we were building the agency. Obviously, it's still a journey. Obviously, it's, but yeah, I don't think Sonder and Tell is about working with Kate and Emily at all, really, anymore. And so I think we're obviously working towards that, and it's obviously working in some ways. It's like definitely more about the team and the work and what that work stands for.
No, fair enough. And I think, as you said, a business also gives a different like perspective to things as well. Like
Totally, yeah,
it's an outsider looking in. So I think sometimes it's easy to be very protective of what you're doing and what you're building, but like to get that external perspective really helps in like trying to build what you want to build rather than what you just have currently.
totally. And I think that's what like agencies are built on, right? It's like you're saying to a client, no, you need an external perspective to help you see your brand for what it really is. And you're too in the weeds to know, you're too in the work, like you know the brand better than anyone else, but actually because you've got so much of it and you've got so many like responsibilities and all the team and all your customers, like you're too close to it. So you need that external perspective. And that's exactly what a business coach did for us, or Mitali did for us, was give us that external perspective and ask the right questions. I think she should, brilliant at asking. Well, she's brilliant at coaching, but asking the right questions that kind of draw out what you already know, but you're too close to see.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But moving on to our next segment, it's another game. It's called Two Lies and One Truth. So the idea is that you give us three statements from your entire journey so far. It can either be challenges or accomplishments. One of them will be true and the other two will be false statements. And then Anuj and I have to guess which is the correct one.
Okay. We hired someone who left after a week. We won a D and AD pencil. And we won Forbes 30 under 30 for marketing.
Interesting is there's one of the statements is kind of a challenge, a sad thing, or something that had to be dealt with, whereas the other two are accomplishments. I kind of don't want to say DNA pencil because I think we've established that the exact advertising world is not what you're in. So I don't know if you would have gone. Okay, I'm gonna go with hired someone that left after 1 week. Shamini, what about you?
Yeah, I was thinking similar.
Your initial thought was right. We didn't win a D&AD pencil. And it wouldn't, you were right. You were totally right. And we did hire someone who left after a week.
So what happened? Because I mean, that's happened to me before. It's happened to me very recently. But what was your experience? What exactly ended up happening?
Well, I don't want to go into it too much because of protecting the person, but I think I think hiring, especially when you like a business like agency where your people are the most important part of what you're doing. I think hiring is always so hard, but we hired someone who I think their dream was to make, they were a copywriter, but their dream was to make like big advertising campaigns, big, their dream was to see their name or like their copy in lights. And that's not what we do. And so, but it was great because I think it was like, we introduced them to the team, we like really onboarded them. And within a week, he was like, oh, this is not what I want to do. And we had been feeling the same. He was feeling the same. And so it was fine. But yeah, that was definitely, it was just a lesson also in being super clear about your brand as well. And like what you do and who's right for it and who's not.
I think so. My experience was much worse. Wherein I think the person that we brought on board, so we'd made an offer to them, and well, they didn't respond initially, and then they responded via email that they've accepted the offer. And when we tried to like onboard them and everything, they just didn't respond to us for like a few days, and we we're like, "Hey, what's happening?" Reached out to them over message, reached out to them over email, and then we asked them to get on an onboarding call, training call. They didn't join. They were unwell. And after like a week and a half, we realized that like, this person is kind of stringing us along, not stringing us along. We don't know. But now I think what we all believe what actually happened was that they took our offer letter and leveraged it against another company to get a better offer. Which is,
Straight
I think it's quite, it was quite gutting because we actually did like the candidate quite a bit, but it's just things that happen. But yeah, I was just gonna say like it's just interesting. I don't think I mentioned this before, but we run the Cannes advertising equivalent awards show in India. So they're called the Curious Creative Awards. So yeah, like T&AD Pencil, Cannes, Lions, kind of equivalent for India. Our award is an elephant.
Nice.
So yeah, just thought I'd mention that.
We won our first award the other day. We won a Brand Impact Gold Award for this work we did with Catkin. And actually from like, we're not really, I mean, we're just not big enough, I guess, for one, but also like some of the people there had like whole teams that are, doing awards and that type of thing. But also because our work isn't necessarily always about the like external like campaign or whatever it is. And it's also not the design. We're often not like, we're not an awards focused agency, but it felt really good to win an award. So I was like, maybe we should be more, but
it's the entire awards ecosystem is like an economy and an industry of its own.
I know.
Which is quite intense. But I think that's another thing about, what you were mentioning about the person that left, is that in such like creative fields, there is a lot of, I mean, it's a very delicate balance of like, credit and seeing your name up there, seeing your work on big screens and stuff like that. So like, there are people who are like happy to work behind the scenes and like just focus on doing good work. And then there's people like who kind of want their name and their personal branding to grow with their career. Either or is like great, but it just needs to be the right fit.
Yeah. And I think it's not, as you said, there's no right or wrong way to be. I think it's more just like the type of work that we do at Sonder Tell is like more about the training. It's more about you then training the team to be able to do an amazing creative campaign or whatever it is. Whereas there are some people who are, advertising copywriters and they put their heart and soul into creating these amazing scripts or these amazing campaigns. And so, it was more just, it wasn't the right fit.
Cool. So with that, let's go to our next game. So this one's called Red Flags, wherein it's not that, like, it sounds quite intense now that I think of it, but it's very
But I
simple.
just immediately go to like red flags for like partners.
Yeah, so this is like red flags for your company, right? So we're going to give you
Okay.
three situations. In each of the situations, there are two things that are going great, the green flags, and one that's not so great, the red flags. So totally nine statements. We've adapted these for Sonder and Tell, of course. And basically, you have to choose which situation you'd rather be in. Cool. So situation one is that Sonder and Tell has successfully expanded across the European market. Sonder and Tell experienced rapid revenue growth, tripling its annual earnings within just 2 years. Um, but there has been increased employee burnout within Sonder and Tell. Situation two is that you have a compelling offer for acquisition. Your innovative content strategies have consistently garnered attention and accolades within the industry, but one of your competitors is poaching all of your clients. And finally, situation three is that Sonder and Tell has retold the story of over 1,000 companies. You now have a team of 50 people, but your latest project is received horribly on social media.
Okay. And
It's gonna be a little more interesting after our conversation to see now which situation you choose, but yeah.
oh, I definitely choose situation. Oh wait, actually let me read, that's so me just like jumping into it. Um yeah, I'd say as per my original, I'd say situation three. Because I think, yeah, that's the goal is to be helping. Yeah, the goal is to help brands tell positive stories and like positive stories that impact the world. And I think that yeah, so that was like the green flag of we've retold the story of over 1,000 companies, um, growing a team to 50, um, like amazing. And if they cannot be, as it says in situation one, if they cannot be burnt out and they're happy and they're in this like thriving culture where everyone's respected and like people are enjoying their jobs and people are believe in our mission and vision, then that's great. And I think either you spin it, I could in a if I was coming up with a story for the third one, it could be that, you know, some, I don't know, anti climate groups are hating our latest project on social media because it actually is going to transform it's going to transform the world and gonna, I don't know, make zero cars. I'm going to come up with like we have no cars and everyone hates us for it, but we've come up with a way to do that. Or it's just that like I think the projects, yeah, obviously we want every project to be a success, and that would be awful to have a project that you really believe in to be received horribly on social media. But those are kind of the ups and downs that you take with agency, whereas I think the other ones are maybe more harmful. Like the first one is that your people aren't happy, which is just like we started this agency to create a culture where people were happy, so it would be kind of a failure. I think the second one is okay, but it kind of shows that if actually one of your competitors was poaching all of your clients, it probably means that like in being acquired, you've lost what truly made you special and what people were picking you for in the first place. So it would be like, oh, cool, we got acquired, but we lost, the essence and identity of Sonder and Tell, and we weren't really serving clients, which is like the main point of having an agency. So yeah, I'd say situation three, and either you can spin it that spin it that it's being received horribly because it's so impactful that it's pissing off some people, or it's just like, yeah, you've got to take the punches.
Yeah, fair enough. I think there are like we've had like guests spin a red flag like from a different perspective quite often. And yeah, more often than not, it's the idea that there's going to be like certain low points of the business, but which is the
Yeah.
one that you're willing to deal with, and that's something that you expect to happen anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
And like ones that are least harmful, I guess, to the core of your business, like you said, like the employee satisfaction, and like even though the acquisition is not necessarily a green flag, like those things are important to you. So I think it also, like through this game, so to say, like we get to learn more about what your core beliefs and what the priority of your business is. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's a good game.
Um,
I like it. I might steal
thank
that for like one of our retros or something.
Oh, perfect. But our last game is the rapid fire. So pretty self-explanatory, quick and rapid answers and short answers. So the first question is, how many all-nighters did you pull in your first year of Sonder Tell?
0.
Nice. How many days of leave have you taken in the last year?
Maybe 14?
Okay. What is the scrappiest thing that you've done to build your business?
I think just scrappy is just like contacting every single person that we know and trying to get a meeting with them. I think also our first pitches looked pretty scrappy because we just had no idea what we were doing. So they were like a one pager on a Google Doc, which just like cringe. But
Fair enough. Your proudest moment with Sonder and Tell?
it's hard to do it quick fire because I don't think there's one like award or moment, or I think my proudest moment always happens when I hear the team talking about the our offering as Sonder and Tell, and I'm like, whoa, we've come so far from just like writing. Like it's not one moment, but it happened the other day where we were pitching and one of the team were talking about a previous project that we'd done and like how we'd done, it's not just about the story, but we've done all these workshops of embedding the strategy with teams and like how we'd then done like a marketing narrative for the year, or we could do that. And like all of this stuff that I was just like, whoa, we have come so far from like me and Kate talking about, tone of voice. And that was like a super proud moment. So I think it's more, yeah, I'm always so bad at like one specific, but proudest moments that, yeah.
What was your biggest sacrifice to make Sonder and Tell possible?
Maybe social life. Again, I think, sorry, I know these are supposed to be rapid. I think we haven't made that many sacrifices because I think we've always been quite conscious of building Sonder and Tell in like step with our lives. And I don't think we necessarily, I think the thing that's maybe like restful nights or something, like I think our brains are always, I think maybe that's what we've given up, is like maybe our mental freedom of just thinking about ourselves. Yeah,
makes sense. What was the one time you felt like you let Sonder and Tell down?
when we got bad feedback on a project, and they didn't like one of the concepts, and I don't think when a client didn't like the work and we had to do it again.
Would you choose books or podcasts?
Books, sorry.
Do you prefer an iPad or a notebook?
Notebook.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Morning person.
And your favorite social media platform?
I'd say I spend the most amount of time on Instagram, but I think TikTok is more weird and wonderful.
Fair. Okay, so that concludes the rapid fire segment and bringing us to the end of our conversation. But before we let you go, we ask every guest to ask our next guest a question. So we'll first ask you that question, and then you can ask our next guest one. We had 2 guests on our previous podcast, so we have 2 questions for you. The first one is,
I think I always love to learn, like, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given? I know that's probably cliche, but I love to hear people's different stories about like what they like what they like, what was like made a big impression on them, and like what changed their trajectory.
I think what I spoke about earlier is building a business that you can step out of, building a business around what you believe versus like building a business around you. But that's very specific to me. And then I think the other piece of advice is not sacrificing what you want for an idea of success, and that you can build your business around things that you want in your life. Like I have a child. I like both Kate and I have children. So I think I think it's that idea of like sacrifice. It might be you have to sacrifice for a certain level of success or a certain, but I think if you should think about what you want your life to look like, as much as what you want your business to look like.
Yeah, fair enough. And the second question is,
I think I would be curious about if they weren't doing what they were doing, what else would they be doing? So I'm curious, like, what the alternative would be.
I keep saying this to the team ever since I saw Barbie and Ken said that his job was beach. I was like, I really want my job to be beach. I want my next job to be beach, which would probably mean that I would need to be acquired for my job to be beach. So it's probably never going to happen. But beach.
sounds good. But yeah, that concludes the final segment. But yeah, thank you so much,
Thank you so much
for being on. It's been great, and like learning more about how Sonder Tell became what it is. But I think like one really interesting point, as you like just mentioned, was that like it's important to know what you want your life to be like. So it's important not to just sacrifice things for the heck of it or for the heck of being successful on paper, but rather to see what that aligns with what you want. So yeah, that was really cool to see.
Great. Thank you so much.